Alright, hello everyone and welcome to AEW Discussion. I'm your host in AEW enthusiast Dougie Doug. In today's episode I'm going to be discussing Dynamite, December 28th, 2022 episode. And not just any episode of Dynamite, no, the New Year's Smash edition of Dynamite. And the big question coming into this episode is, would there be a match 7 in the best of 7 series between the Elite and Death Triangle? And also, the show was main evented by a TNT title match with Samoa Joe defending his title against the former champion Wardlow. And with that, we'll go ahead and get right into the action, starting with Bryan Danielson versus All Ego Ethan Page. And this was a strong opener for Dynamite that highlighted Page as a credible contender while putting Danielson over on his path to a world title match with MJF. So Danielson has a history of head and neck injuries that is well documented, and in a way it's useful for Danielson because he can sell either of those body parts as like a work injury, and people buy into it. People will question it because how well documented his history with head and neck injuries is. There's always going to be that question in the back of people's minds if about the reality of what they are watching. Such was the case here. Danielson selling a bit of a head injury. And if history is an indication, it will probably come up again. It probably will come up again. And presumably in the match with MJF. Credit to Danielson for using the Regal stretch as his finisher in this match. Also kind of a way to keep William Regal involved in the story of the program, thinking about MJF and how he attacked Regal. That was kind of like the start of this whole program too, so nice to see Danielson use that. Jon Moxley and Claudio Castagnoli versus Top Flight. So this has been a feud that's been kind of going on TV for a little bit. We've seen Moxley versus Dante Martin. We've seen Moxley versus Darius Martin. And then on Rampage there was that Trios Battle Royal with some cash on the line, and Top Flight won that by eliminating Claudio Castagnoli of the BCC. So this was kind of a continuation of this kind of like feud that's been developing between these two teams, and this turned out to be a great match. Top Flight followed up their breakout performance with another strong showing, this time against guys who are standard bearers in AEW for professional wrestling. Dante in particular seems to have fallen off the radar a bit in recent months despite some solid performances over the last year, so it's nice to see him and his brother too, who's struggled with injuries this past year, had the opportunity to reestablish themselves as a team against guys who have the trust and respect of fans, and also the belief in them as top tier competitors. Best of 7 series, the Elite versus Death Triangle, match 6, Falls Count Anywhere, and by far this was my favorite match of the entire series, and it was also probably going to be voted as the best match of the series thanks to some unique spots in the finish itself. It is possible, it's very possible that the 7th match will be just as ridiculous as this, if not even more so. I mean, there's ladders involved, so their titles are going to be hanging above the ring, so maybe not as much room for activity per se, but I mean, these guys love to fly around the ring, so they're going to be doing some crazy stuff off the ladders. And honestly, they kind of put themselves in that spot. I'm sure they don't mind, but anything less than what would happen here would be considered disappointing, considering again what they did in this match here. This was still a party style trios match, and the last bout between these two thankfully comes next week, because this is a stale matchup at this point, which is to be expected. Best of 7 series, never a good idea. Best of 3 is about as good as is really what you should have shot for in the first place, but nonetheless we're almost at the finish line, and this match pretty wild and fun in the best way. So again, my favorite match, probably the best match in the series, but thankfully we're wrapping this one up next week. TNT Championship match, Samoa Joe versus Wardlow, and the match itself is solid, but it is apparent at this point that Wardlow is, dead in the water from a creative standpoint. This was a guy who started the year red hot and was poised to become a breakout star, splitting with MJF, having that feud with MJF, and then he gets that win against MJF at Double or Nothing, but everything since then has kind of felt like just one misstep after another. He won the TNT title, yes, but Tony Khan couldn't really keep him hot during that title reign. and instead would pair him with tag teams or with other stars instead of giving him a chance to stand out on his own like he did in that feud against MJF. And because of that, Wardlow's been done a great disservice, and the imagery of him lying on the mat as Allen saved him from Joe only kind of further solidified a fall from grace, if you will, or being dead in the water. What motivation there would be for a de-emphasis of Wardlow, if there is any motivation. I doubt that's a real thing, but maybe it is. I don't know exactly what's going on with Wardlow creative-wise, but he's got that knee injury, so does that keep him off TV for a little bit? What exactly does that... what happens with that? But, if there's not an intentional de-emphasis, then there might be a bigger issue with the creative process itself. So, I'm interested to see what they do next with Wardlow there. I guess Samoa Joe and Darby Allin got some unfinished business. I would expect that to be wrapped up in short order before getting back to Wardlow versus Joe, I would guess. And, with that, we'll go ahead and wrap up this episode of AEW Discussion. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to hit that like button down below.